Hey guys, before we start the episode, I just want to give a quick content warning. We're going to be talking about performances that include blood, piercings, and non-traditional uses of animal meats. So if you have any sensitivities to any of that, now's your chance to escape.
What happened?
We did this ourselves.
They're coming. It can't be.
Where is everyone?
Hello, survivors. On this episode of the Apocalypse Postcast, a podcast, I'm bringing you a performance artist who once got a shout out as an evil pagan on the 700 Club, which I think any of us would call a badge of honor. His music project, called Aesthetic Meatfront, has toured the world using human instruments that are hooked, pierced, suspended, and mic'd. He's a flesh artist, body modification ritualist, and human pincushion. Welcome to the show, Louis Fleischauer.
Hi, hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I'm really excited to talk to you. So to start out, your art and your performances, they're very much bathed in the blood of the post-apocalypse. So how do you use apocalyptic themes to comment on real-world issues?
I think it's pretty easy because real world issues, if we don't work on them, we will very quickly find ourselves in the middle of an apocalypse.
So do you think it serves as a warning?
It serves as a warning. It also serves as a medium of raw energy because in an apocalyptic state, there are no boundaries because there's anarchy. So from an artistic point of view and from what could happen, there are really no boundaries. Obviously, from a real life, there are lots of boundaries because if you don't know where to get your food, you have to focus on your food. You can't make any art. But from a creative point of view, I like it because of the lack of boundaries. And I also like the idea of it because it is an apocalyptic state is a very raw primal state because you have to use all your instincts in order to survive. My art is always about raw primal energy. The main difference, though, is that for me, it's important that the primal instincts and that you can indulge in them on a healthy level without being controlled by them. And the more we suppress those energies, the more they will control us.
That's really interesting. I love that you can use art to kind of explore these different aspects of what it means to be human without suffering them in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Your music project, it's called Aesthetic Meatfront.
Yep.
Can you tell me where that name comes from and describe what people will see at an Aesthetic Meatfront show?
The name came from my first performance in this direction. I wanted it to create very raw primal energy, and back at this time, the best way I could do this was to create some sort of a room. I had an accident, I got some money from it, and I spent all that money on meat. I went to the meat warehouse and we rented a gallery, and I just decorated all the walls with meat.
Oh, wow.
And then I had it on stage. I had lots of fresh blood that we would walk through the audience and paint everybody with it. And yeah, at the end, it was so crazy. The audience would just throw it at each other. Everybody was messy. Everybody was happy and having a good time. I definitely reached my goal to create something very raw and primal.
That's pretty interesting that you used raw meat. How long was this set up? All right, so raw meat has its own smell when it's fresh.
Yeah. This is one of the main reasons why I use it, because it triggers something in your subconsciousness.
A lot of art is very visual, music's very audible, but in this case, you were actually filling an atmosphere with the smell of fresh death in a way. So that just adds a whole new level that's not normally seen in an art gallery.
Yeah, for me, I like my art always to be multidimensional.
Yeah.
Like sound is great, but it's not enough. Visual is great, but it's also just one level. And being able to use smell as a level adds a new dimension to it. So that's one of the reasons I used it.
So can you describe what is happening on stage during an Aesthetic Meatfront show?
It always depends a little bit on the subject. The last one we performed was called Body Under Attack, which was pre-corona. Now it sounds totally different. And it was about control from state, industry, and church on how they want to control your body. So I had each person was a different sculpture representing a different way of control. There are usually those elements which represent something that has the message of the performance. Then there are human instruments. Most of the time, the message and the instrument is the same thing or the same person. The idea behind the human instruments is that whatever we feel on stage gets shared with the audience in form from sound. So the hook goes into the skin. On the other side from the hook, there's a metal coil, for instance, with a microphone, and it goes through an effect, and that goes through the speaker, and the audience can hear it. So if somebody beats the spring that is connected to a person, the person with the spring will feel it, and the audience will hear it.
Oh, wow.
And usually the way it is, it starts out with a little bit of separation between the performance and the audience, and during the performance, this barrier gets dissolved, and at the end, a lot of time, my human instruments are in the middle of the audience, and then the audience can play. So the idea is that the audience doesn't just consume entertainment, but is actively part in a ritual.
Yeah, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. You actually hand out like these metal cudgels, pipes, sticks, all sorts of things, and people will pick them up and start banging on these springs, which is obviously affecting the performers, but it becomes this group performance in a way where everybody is playing to this shared beat.
Yeah, it's for me, the interaction is always very important. Even if I don't do performance art, when I do my wearable art, for instance, the moment somebody wears my outfit that I make, it becomes alive.
Wow.
And when I do music with the current project, for instance, I ask people to send me their COVID fears. So I use this as sole sound source and create tracks with them. So 90% of my art is in one way or another interactive with the audience.
Hey guys, I'm jumping in here real quick because so far, the music you've heard in the background is short clips of Aesthetic Meatfront's sound as it is on the album, but their live show takes on a completely amplified vibe. And I want to give you an idea of the ritualistic chaos that's happening on and off the stage. I'm playing some footage from AMF's Wasteland weekend performance in 2012. And let me just try to describe what's happening. The high ping you're hearing is a couple Wastelanders tapping metal pipes on their own costume armor. There's blood spattered on their arms. Behind them is a girl being suspended in the back of a pickup truck with hooks in her legs, stomach, and chest. It pans left to see performers and audience members banging on drums and piles of scrap metal, with Lewis in the middle, dancing hypnotically. He's topless, bald, and covered in blood. Back to the right, we see a set of 3 human instruments. The first is a female in a sheer dress. She's got some kind of neck and jaw trap on, which looks like it's right out of a Saw movie. And she has a bloody hook in her side, just above her waist, that's connected by a long spring and chain to another performer, who's hooked in his upper chest. He's topless and wearing a cone-shaped mask that covers his eyes. He has another hook in his stomach that connects him to the third performer, who's hooked through the skin of his neck, and wears a mask with 2 horns jutting out from the forehead. Back to Lewis, and he's now beating a sheep's head in rhythm with a couple short pipes as another almost naked female who's been anointing the audience with blood pours what she has left over Lewis's head. Another performer takes a pipe and starts to hit and scrape along the springs that connect the human instruments. It's quite the show. So I remember seeing you for the first time at your performance at Wasteland Weekend. I was definitely not prepared, and the only clues I got from anybody was you do not want to miss this show. It was a very violent and visceral show that you put on, and I remember seeing more than a few people in the audience were really having an emotional, spiritual experience. How do you see pain and blood as a means of enlightenment and healing?
Pain is just, it's an intense body experience. It all depends on how you use it and how the environment is.
Mm-hmm.
Pain is obviously necessary so that you don't burn your hand on the stove.
Right.
But you can also use it as a tool. If you use it controlled, if you know what you're doing, it triggers body reactions, it works with your subconscious, and you're also aware of your body, especially in a pampered society as we are in right now. We are so sheltered that if we see a drop of blood, people freak out. But blood represents life just as well as it represents death. There is no birth without bleeding.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that when people are so upset, get so triggered by anything that opens the skin, they see it as self-harm,
Yeah.
something dangerous, etc., no matter how controlled the environment is and how good the intention is. But if you're eating fast food, it's totally normal. Nobody says, panic, he's eating fast food, he's destroying his life. Or if you work a job you hate.
Yeah.
Or if you're in a relationship that is abusive and you're still being stuck there and you're not leaving it. This is so much real self-harm compared to I'm in charge of my body. I know what I'm doing. I want to feel my body and I want to share this experience, just feeling alive.
That is interesting. And yeah, you were mentioning self-harm, and I was just thinking about like a landscaper who spends his day, shoveling ditches. No offense, good work is work, but that in itself, like if you go home every day just completely worn out with your body in pain, for somebody else, that's a different thing than, feeling pain under your own control.
If you sit in an office and you fuck up your eyes because you look too much in the screen, you fuck up your back and you have no passion in it, you drain your life, but it's completely normal.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so I know that you use local performers when you're on tour.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you do that and why someone would volunteer to be tortured and put on display like that?
Well, for California, it's really easy because I started out in California.
Oh, okay.
I lived there for 15 years almost.
Gotcha.
So I have a lot of family, not blood related, but in my heart related family. There is a big suspension body modification scene. And I'm lucky enough that in those circles, most people are familiar with my work.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take as much to convince them. The other thing which I like about it is that wherever I go, I always include a local element. Working with different people always makes each ritual a bit different. So that there is not too much routine, that there's always something exciting about it.
That's pretty cool. And it's really great that, it kind of fits into the almost cultish nature of what Aesthetic Meatfront is, that there are these followers around the world.
I try not to use the word cult.
Okay, explain that.
Because with cult, it always has a negativity to it. Cult is, well, visually, sometimes it can go in the same direction, but not always. There are many different cults, like Church of Scientology.
Yeah.
is definitely cold. Has nothing to do with body art.
Yeah.
Cold is about control at the end.
Mm-hmm.
While I don't want to control anybody. I want to open doors for people and they can walk through it or not. And they can look into it. They can choose not to. I want people to get the best out of the experience, use it for their daily life, and if they get inspired, do their own art. Not copy something, just let it grow. Let the seed that they found in the art grow within them and create their own thing.
That's beautiful. And yeah, when I said cult, I guess I was kind of meaning like a Wasteland tribe-ish cult, where it's it's kind of just for playing around, like a little bit of cosplay, a little bit of game. Okay,
No,
so
I understood it, but a lot of
okay,
people,
cool.
when they hear cult,
I mean, and you're right, there are real cults, and some of them can be really detrimental to people's lives,
yeah,
which is pretty wild. But yeah, I guess there's a difference between that real life of following somebody, no matter what your better judgment is, versus kind of the where you get to just play it for a little while and then go back and kind of be able to make your own judgments.
mm-hmm.
Last year, I felt my mental health, all of the progress that I've made seems to be going backwards, and old habits sometimes come back.
You have a brand new performance that you put together called CoviDarkness, Sound of Trauma. Can you describe what this one's all about?
Yes. The idea behind this one is that no matter how we look at the situation or where we are at the situation, we all get affected by it in one way or another. People either had it and went through it, lost somebody, or can't take the isolation anymore, or lost somebody because they couldn't take the isolation. It changes society. It also reflects a lot of the issues that society had before and multiplies it.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that people can send me any way they feel negative affected by it. And I used that sound, the COVID trauma, and turned it into art. And then at the very end, it will get destroyed. I will deconstruct the sound, play it backwards. I write the fears that people send me on papers, big sheets of papers, which also will be destroyed at the end, so that there is a ritualistic destruction of the trauma.
Yeah, so hopefully like a shared catharsis.
Yeah, exactly. Just something to help people to get it out of their system and see it be destroyed, and hopefully that helps a little bit with the situation.
I love that. And this is an online only event, so that's why you're having people send in so that you can still have
Yes.
audience participation, even though it's simply going to be online.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. So when and where can people tune in? How do they find this show?
It's on my website, louisfleischauer.com.
Mm-hmm.
If you click right in the front page, there is a tree link, and it has the link to the live stream, and it also has a link to the Facebook event. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at Louis Fleischauer. I'll put the link in the bio.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 3-day event, so it's not only is it the first performance I will be doing without an audience, or without a physical audience. It's also the longest performance I will be doing. It's the 25th of February, the 26th of February, and the 1st of March.
Mm-hmm.
The first day will be about isolation. The second day will be about grief, which will be a more sculptural visual. The first one will be more meditative, and the third one will be about fear and the whole madness that goes along with it, which will be more chaotic, more like what you usually know with aesthetic meat font. And on this day, the 1st of March, the ending will be that I'll shave my head.
Oh, wow.
I've been growing my hair since my last performance.
Gotcha.
And it will be exactly 1 year since I have not performed. And my sacrifice will be that I shave it all off. I've been working on this for an entire year. I have not cut my hair. I have not dyed it. I've done nothing with my hair except washing it for the last hair. It made me look very funny sometimes in between. But it was my vow that I will not do anything with my hair until I perform. And 1st of March will be exactly 1 year. And then it will all be gone.
Well, that's really exciting. I bet you're ridiculously excited to get back at it.
Yes.
Awesome. And is there any kind of an audience participation during the show, or is it something where you can tune in and relax and watch?
Yes, there will be some audience participation during it. The streaming link will have multiple windows for different rooms, and one button it says participate. And depending on the day, you can send in your words. You can type them in. On the last day, I want people to send me their frustration screams.
Oh, wow.
And we will work this into the sound.
Wow, that should be wild.
And the person working on this one, on the participation sounds while we're performing live, is actually Trevor from San Diego.
Oh, wow.
So you will send the screams to San Diego, and he will feed them live into the performance in Berlin.
That is crazy. So it's going to be a worldwide performance already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that it is free to tune in. I know that you're accepting donations, and I would like to encourage everybody to donate what you can, because with COVID going on, artists are some of the biggest sufferers and the most necessary to our sanity. So yeah, if you can't afford anything, just tune in.
Yes.
But definitely, if you can, send some dollars Lewis's way, because he is a mastermind.
Please do.
Yeah.
No, especially in Germany, the way the government they're just telling, oh yeah, we put this much money towards art, and they put so many barriers in it that nothing ends up on the art scene. The money goes to the airlines, and if you have a normal employment, you get money, no problem. But if you're a self-employed artist, it's almost impossible to get any money unless if you're bankrupt, and then you can get social service money, which is next to nothing. And you have to fill out so much paperwork that you cannot do any art anymore because your brain is dead.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like it's very similar here. There's not a whole lot of money to go for artists, and when it does, it seems like most of it goes toward very few artists. But I mean, there's a lot of artists in the world that are having a very hard time making a living on what they do.
Yeah, especially since it's not just that you can't perform anywhere, but with the performing, you also sell your merchandise. And this one, without performance, there is no booth. So it's a whole red tail.
Yep, absolutely. You were born and raised in East Germany before the Berlin Wall came down. Can you describe what that was like and how it influenced your art?
That's correct. Censorship was always present, which in a different form than it is now. Now censorship is very strong present from in social media. Like I have a lot of difficult showing my art on the internet.
Yeah.
Because it is raw, it is naked, and I have to deal with a lot of self-censorship if I want to post something, which is very frustrating. In East Germany, it was more obvious. Everybody knew the regime wanted to control you. If you looked different, you've been automatically seen as an enemy of the state. I got constantly controlled by the police. Everybody was just like a little group of death rock, industrial goth people in the it was the late 80s, and every time the cops would see us, they would ask us for our ID, they would ask us why we are dressed this way, they would ask us how we feel about the state, etc.
Uh-huh.
So eventually it became so ridiculous that every time we would see the cops, we would take our ID out and walk towards the cops and just give them the ID, answer all the questions before they could even ask them.
Uh-huh.
So we made a joke out of it because it was the only way to deal with it.
Yeah.
The more scary part was when the Stasi knocked on my door.
And the Stasi were what, the Russian police?
No, it's the KGB version. It's the East German version of the KGB. It's the secret police.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I was lucky since I was not 18 yet. So they couldn't do too much, but it was very scary. And the worst thing about it is that you couldn't even tell your friends. Because if you would tell your friends, oh yeah, I got interrogated by the KGB, by the Stasi,
Uh-huh.
then everybody would automatically assume you work for them.
Oh, wow.
Because it was an environment where the Stasi was ever present, especially if you're in any way of subculture. So at that moment, it was very scary. At a later point, after the wall came down, I got my files that the Stasi had on me.
Really?
And reading it was very funny. Because I was 17, I was a scared teenager.
Uh-huh.
I would tell them what I would think they want to know without giving them any information.
Oh, okay.
And I was assuming they are so strong and powerful that they obviously know that I'm bullshitting them.
Uh-huh.
But no, they just wrote it down word for word. And yeah, I was saying, well, I'm in school now. I just want to be a little wild, but next year when I'm out of school, I have to get a real job. So I obviously have to look normal. So pretty much I was telling them it's just a face. And they wrote it just like that. Oh yeah, he thinks it's just a face and he wants to be... yeah, and I read it 30 years later, still dressed like it. I'm like, really?
I was going to say, so then you went off and got a real job, right?
Yes, putting hooks in people.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, so I imagine that when the Berlin Wall came down, it was very freeing as far as like being able to work on your art a little bit more freely.
Yeah, as an artist, the freest years was definitely after the wall came down.
Uh-huh.
I moved to Berlin. I lived in a squad. The times in Berlin at the early 90s was probably the freest I ever felt.
Wow.
Because things were still in a transition. The cops didn't really know what to do with the new situation. And they let people do their thing. As long as you don't obviously go against any laws, they would just let you do your thing. People would get stoned all over the place. People were squatting houses, opening bars, making art. There was a lot of free space where you could just express yourself and do art.
That's amazing.
Which saved my life, that the wall came down and right at this moment. Because I was at a very self-destructive phase back then. Because obviously there was a lot of pressure on me and there was private stuff. And yeah, I was going downhill. And then I moved to Berlin, moved in a squad, got stoned, made arts, made friends. And that saved my life. Yeah.
Wow. If you could send one message to the whole world, what would it be?
I think currently the message would be take a look at the current situation and learn from it. Going back to normal would be going back to self-destructive madness. So use that dark moment to grow from it, not to go back to the self-destructive way.
I think there is a lot to learn from this. And it's interesting because every time I go out to a festival like Wasteland Weekend or something like that. It changes you a little bit. It makes you appreciate things in life that you kind of take for granted. And I think that COVID has definitely awoken a lot of people up to the things that we underappreciate. Face-to-face contact, live performances,
Yes,
art. Like
yes,
there's the list is endless. And hopefully we can all be a little bit more appreciative of life coming out of it.
yes.
Yeah. Well, survivors, I've been talking to Louis Fleischauer of Aesthetic Meatfront. For more information on him and his art, CoviDarkness, Aesthetic Meatfront, and more, check out louisfleischauer.com. I'll link that in the show notes. Louis, thanks so much for coming on today. I know that you're very busy getting ready for this show, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And hi to everybody.
And we can't wait to see you back in the States. Definitely let us know when you'll be back. I know it won't be for a little while still, but can't wait to see you again.
Will do. I miss my people. Okay. Ciao.
Awesome. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this week. If you enjoyed the show, share it with your friends. If you hated it, send it to your enemies in a rocket fuel-filled Molotov cocktail. Until next time, survivors, stay alive. Hey survivors, if you want to help support The Apocalypse Post and get some rad merch in exchange, head over to theapocalypsepost.square.site, where you can pick up some patches, postcards, or our newest edition, a set of guitar picks. Or get yourself a limited edition Apocabob pin. This little man is showing the world that all it takes to survive the end times is a gas mask and a dream of, well, just staying alive.